shots representing that.
We started the renovation program early 2006 with a plan spanning over almost 2 years. The idea behind the plan being to renovate completely the entire universe of EVE, including all the ships, all the content itself, Stargate stations, rocks, containers, whatever, you name it. So basically each ship, each structure, each asset had to be remodeled completely from scratch. Actually, it's interesting to underline that we are not enhancing the existing models, but the goal is really to rebuild EVE completely from scratch, using as an inspiration the original content as it is now, and simply bringing all of EVE to the next generation level of graphics. The difference is simply amazing. I mean, EVE Online is the most beautiful MMO around, even though it came out in 2003, and we're still running it basically on the same standard as we got when we started then. And now, it's only now that we're getting close to the quality and the visual style that the artist and the art director had in mind at that time. So it's a huge step ahead for EVE in that perspective, that actually we're getting close to the original idea of EVE. It's an evolution of the game, of course, but it's also going deeper in the concept and the visual idea of the game itself. All this, of course, is a huge amount of work. It includes all the variations of the ships. So we have over 500 spaceships going out now, completely renewed, all of them. We have going out now over 100 objects also for the environment itself. From 40 kilometers long stations down to tiny rocks and containers. We're redoing everything. And we are starting now with the first release of the renovated content with all the ships, so that's over 500 ships, and we are putting out also over 100 objects for the environment, for the universe of EVE itself, mainly stargates and stations, some outpost elements also, and diverse objects that we've been redoing. And then the next step will be to bring out a bit later, but very soon, another more than 200 objects that have been renovated. So overall, we're talking about 500 plus ships and more than 300 objects that we've been completely renovating over the past 2 years. What we did by renovating all the objects and all the assets in EVE is basically remodeling every single object. It means that some huge objects like stations, for example, that are supposed to be 40 kilometers high in the game have now up to 40,000 polygons, and that's an insane number of polygons for one single object in-game, especially for an MMO. But that's not all. I mean, we remodeled all the assets from scratch, but we also changed the set, and we increased the whole set of textures that are applied to the 3D models. And all the models in EVE used to have one single texture, which was 1024 by 1024, including all the information for the aspect of the object. And now, from this single small texture, we went from that to 5 different textures, and each texture is 4 times bigger than the old one, which means that we have now effects with normal maps, with diffuse, occlusion, and glow maps, and so on. That gives us, by combining all these maps, much more than what we got from the single tiny texture before. And of course, combined with the new sets of shaders that we have, we can split the surface on the models in different areas, and combining the textures and the shaders, we end up with extremely realistic effects depending on each material. I mean, a Namar ship will shine in a much different way than a Galante ship shines, and if there is some paint matte on some parts or scratched or whatever, it will appear as such, and it won't be just one big average flat texture as it might have been in the past. So that's an extremely big step towards much more realism in the game. And yeah, I mean, it's so basically the modeling itself and the set of textures and all the shaders combined together that are taking us now to the next generation graphics. Just to give you an idea of the size of the project, we did some calculations when we started to plan the entire job, and we ended up with the crazy number of 50 man-years, which means that it would have taken one single 3D artist redoing all the modeling, redoing all the texture job. It would have taken him 50 years, 50 full-time years without vacation, weekend or sick days to completely renovate Eve like we did in less than 2 years. It might sound completely crazy to try to achieve something like that just to make a video game look better, but I have to admit that actually it makes complete sense. Eve is definitely more than just an MMO today. It started as such in 2003, and still today the graphics are great, but Eve is now, I mean, it's grown out of the boundaries of a simple video game. It's more than 200,000 people online. It's a real entity, it's a nation that lives on in this virtual universe. So the idea of renovating Eve is not only to make it look good, but it's actually to bring even more credibility to the game. The game itself is credible because of what's happening in this universe and the way it works and all the interactions. But by having extremely realistic graphics, we also provide an incredible immersion factor for the existing players and also for all the new players that will join Eve now and in the future. So the level of graphics that we are achieving today is what is called the next generation graphics, but actually it's not next generation, it's the best of what you can get today, and at CCP it's what we want for Eve. So we decided to go for it, and Eve will look at its best, it will look the best it can look today.